20 most evil actors in Hollywood history. Some of Hollywood's most beloved stars were hiding behavior that fans were never meant to see. Behind the award smiles and legendary roles were abuse claims, cruel egos, scandals, and secret studios tried to protect. Stay with us because some of these names may completely change how you remember classic Hollywood.
That's the whole point of this.
Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin made audiences laugh with a cane, a bowler hat, and a face built for silent comedy. To millions, he was the tramp, gentle, funny, and strangely heartbreaking. But away from the screen, his private life carried a pattern that still makes his legacy difficult to defend. Chaplin was repeatedly drawn to much younger women. Several of his marriages involved teenage brides, and the age gaps were impossible to ignore. Even in old Hollywood, where powerful men were often protected by fame, his romantic history caused discomfort, gossip, and legal trouble. The public adored his genius, but behind that genius was a man who often seemed to chase youth control and admiration from women far less powerful than himself. How much darkness can audiences ignore when the artist is considered a legend? Chaplin's supporters still point to his brilliance, the films, the timing, the emotion, the influence on cinema itself. But artistic greatness does not erase personal choices. His life shows how Hollywood can turn a flawed man into a sacred figure, polishing the screen image while leaving the uglier truth in the shadows. Charlie Chaplin remains one of film's greatest icons, but his legacy is no longer innocent. John Wayne. John Wayne was one of the biggest names of Hollywood's Western era, but his off-screen reputation was far less heroic than the characters he played. Behind the patriotic image and tough guy roles was a man known for sharp political opinions, personal grudges, and a willingness to belittle people who stood on the wrong side of his loyalties. Wayne's strong conservative views often created tension in Hollywood. But one of the uglier examples came through his loyalty to director John Ford. According to accounts from Wayne's circle, his support for Ford shaped the way he treated Clark Gable, even though Wayne did not seem to have a serious personal reason to attack him. When a screen hero uses his power to insult another star, does the heroic image still hold up? Wayne reportedly mocked Gable's intelligence, reducing a respected actor to a cruel punchline. That kind of comment did not sound like confidence. It sounded like arrogance backed by status. John Wayne's legacy remains massive, but it is not clean. The same man audiences saw as a symbol of strength could also be bitter, dismissive, and willing to use loyalty as an excuse for disrespect. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was one of MGM's biggest stars, with a career that stretched across silent films, classic Hollywood dramas, and an Oscar-winning comeback in Mildred Pierce. On screen, she looked polished, controlled, and untouchable. But after her death, that glamorous image was badly damaged by her daughter, Christina Crawford. In 1978, Christina published Mommy Dearest, a memoir that accused Joan of being cruel, controlling, and abusive behind closed doors. The book described a home ruled by fear, perfectionism, and sudden punishment. To the public, Crawford had been a Hollywood icon. To Christina, she was a mother whose anger could turn terrifying. How does a star adored by millions become remembered by her own child as a source of fear? The accusations shocked Hollywood because they attacked the very image Crawford had spent decades protecting. She had presented herself as disciplined, elegant, and devoted to family, but Christina's account painted something much darker, a woman obsessed with control, status, and obedience. Joan Crawford's legacy is still debated. Some defend her as a complicated woman from a brutal industry. Others see Mommy Dearest as proof that fame can hide private cruelty. Either way, the perfect screen image never fully recovered. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was one of the most powerful actresses of classic Hollywood, known for her fierce eyes, sharp delivery, and performances that could dominate an entire film. But off-screen, that same intensity often made her feared as much as admired. Davis was brutally honest, competitive, and rarely gentle with people she disliked. Her long feud with Joan Crawford became one of Hollywood's most famous rivalries, but it was not just publicity. Davis openly attacked Crawford's character, calling her vain, manipulative, and willing to use charm and sexuality to gain power in the industry. The bitterness between them grew even stronger during Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, where their tension became part of the film's dark energy. When ambition turns into cruelty, does talent still excuse the damage left behind? Davis saw herself as a serious actress fighting for respect in a male-controlled studio system. But her honesty could cut like a weapon. She did not simply compete. She humiliated, dismissed, and judged people with almost no mercy. Bette Davis remains a legend because her talent was undeniable. But her legacy also carries the image of a woman whose brilliance came with sharp edges, and those edges often drew blood in Hollywood. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis became one of America's most famous comedians through his partnership with Dean Martin, his wild physical humor, and decades of charity work. To the public, he was a comic genius who made people laugh and raised money for children in need. But inside his own family, the image was far darker. His youngest son, Joseph, later accused him of emotional and physical cruelty. Their relationship became so broken that Jerry eventually cut ties with him. That alone damaged the warm public image Lewis had built for years. The man celebrated for compassion on television was accused of being cold and punishing behind closed doors. How does a performer raise millions for strangers while leaving his own child feeling abandoned? Lewis's life was also marked by addiction, health problems, bitterness, and a reputation for being difficult. Many admired his talent, but others saw arrogance and cruelty beneath the comedy. His public achievements were real, but they did not erase the pain connected to his private life. Jerry Lewis remains a major figure in comedy history. Still, his legacy carries a brutal contradiction, a man who gave audiences laughter, but whose own family story ended with distant silence and unresolved damage. James Dean. James Dean became a legend after only a handful of major film roles, especially Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, and Giant. His death at 24 helped turn him into a symbol of youth rebellion and misunderstood genius. But the people who worked with him often remembered a much less romantic version. Behind the cult image, Dean was repeatedly described as rude, moody, uncooperative, and difficult on set. Some stage and film colleagues claimed he ignored direction, disrupted scenes, and treated others with little respect. His behavior was not just quiet rebellion. It could become arrogance, manipulation, and open disrespect toward people trying to do their jobs. What happens when a troubled young actor becomes more famous for the myth than the man? Dean's defenders argue that he was intense, sensitive, and ahead of his time. But intensity does not excuse treating co-stars and crews badly. The public turned him into a tragic icon, while many who met him saw someone selfish, immature, and hard to work with. James Dean's talent was real, and his screen presence still matters. But the clean legend hides a darker truth. He was not always the wounded hero fans wanted him to be. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball was one of television's biggest comedy legends, especially through I Love Lucy and later Here's Lucy. Audiences saw her as funny, expressive, and full of energy. But people who worked with her sometimes saw a much harder side. Behind the laughter, Ball had a reputation for being demanding, controlling, and blunt on set. She knew exactly how she wanted a scene to be played, and she was not afraid to correct people in front of others. Some co-stars found that pressure exhausting. Tony Randall, who appeared with her on Here's Lucy, admitted that many people considered her very tough to work with because she could be domineering and direct. When a comedy icon controls every detail, does perfection become its own kind of cruelty? To be fair, Ball usually knew what she was doing. Her instincts helped create some of the sharpest comedy on television. But that did not make her easy. Her confidence could cross into intimidation, and her standards left little room for weakness. Lucille Ball's legacy remains historic, but the woman behind the laughter was not always warm or gentle. She was brilliant, powerful, and at times brutally difficult. Steve McQueen. The public called Steve McQueen the king of cool, but that cool image did not tell the full story. Behind the sunglasses, fast cars, and quiet movie star confidence was a man whose private life could be chaotic, jealous, and frightening. His marriage to actress Neil Adams revealed the darker side of that legend. According to her accounts, McQueen was repeatedly unfaithful and struggled with drug use, especially cocaine. As the relationship deteriorated, charm gave way to suspicion and control. The rebellious energy fans admired on screen became something much more dangerous at home. What happens when Hollywood sells a troubled man as the ultimate symbol of masculinity? One of the most disturbing stories from Adams described McQueen becoming paranoid during a drug-fueled night and frightening her with a gun. That account changed the way many people looked at him. He was not just a restless actor with a bad boy image. He was someone whose anger and instability could make the people closest to him feel unsafe. Steve McQueen's films still matter, and his screen presence remains powerful. But the legend also carries a shadow. The same intensity that made him magnetic on camera could become cruel, reckless, and deeply damaging behind closed doors. Kirk Douglas. After Kirk Douglas died, the tributes came quickly, but so did the accusations that had followed his name for years. To many fans, he was a Hollywood giant, the star of Spartacus, and a man praised for helping break the blacklist. But beneath that heroic image was a darker controversy that never fully disappeared. The most damaging allegation involved Natalie Wood when she was still a teenager. For years, rumors claimed that Douglas had assaulted her during the early part of her career. The accusation was never proven in court, and Douglas never faced a legal judgment over it. But the story became powerful enough to stain his legacy, especially after his death, when social media reopened the debate. What happens when a man celebrated as a Hollywood hero is remembered by others as something much darker? Douglas's defenders point to his long career, his political courage, and his influence on cinema. But admiration does not erase uncomfortable questions. In old Hollywood, powerful men were often protected by silent studios and public image. Kirk Douglas remains an important figure in film history, but his legacy is no longer simple. The praise now sits beside an accusation too serious to ignore. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was sold to audiences as the cheerful boy next door, especially through the Andy Hardy films and his work with Judy Garland. That wholesome image made him one of old Hollywood's most familiar young stars. But the stories attached to his private life and professional behavior created a far uglier picture. Behind the innocent screen persona, Rooney was described by some as abrasive, explosive, and difficult. Reports tied him to gambling, substance abuse, and misconduct around young actresses. One of the most disturbing claims involved alleged inappropriate behavior toward Elizabeth Taylor when she was still very young, a story that sharply clashes with the harmless image studios had built around him. What happens when Hollywood's symbol of youthful innocence is accused of behavior that feels anything but innocent? Rooney's conduct on set also drew criticism. He reportedly made cruel remarks about co-stars and carried an ego that made him hard to work with. The charm audiences saw on screen did not always survive behind the camera. Mickey Rooney's legacy is still tied to classic Hollywood nostalgia, but that nostalgia hides a darker side. The smiling boy America loved grew into a man remembered by many for arrogance, excess, and deeply uncomfortable allegations. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway's name has long carried two reputations: extraordinary talent and terrifying behavior. Her performances in Bonnie and Clyde Chinatown and Network made her a major Hollywood figure. But behind the camera, many stories painted her as cold, explosive, and almost impossible to manage. The complaints followed her for decades. Co-workers accused Dunaway of outbursts, physical aggression, strange demands, and humiliating treatment of people on set. During Mommy Dearest, actress Rutanya Alda claimed Dunaway slapped her for real instead of using a stage slap. Years later, other theater and film workers described similar patterns: yelling, delays, sudden anger, and a need to control everything around her. When does perfectionism stop being artistic discipline and start becoming abuse of power? Dunaway's defenders might say she was intense because she cared deeply about the work. But intensity does not excuse making people afraid to do their jobs. Her reputation became so difficult that even her talent could not fully protect her from criticism. Faye Dunaway remains an Oscar-winning actress with unforgettable screen moments. But her legacy also carries the image of a star whose brilliance came with fear, ego, and a trail of people who said working with her was brutal. Elizabeth Taylor. The scandal that followed Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher did not look like an ordinary Hollywood affair. It was betrayal wrapped in grief, friendship, and publicity. Fisher had been married to Debbie Reynolds, one of Taylor's close friends, while Taylor was mourning the death of her husband, producer Mike Todd. At first, Fisher appeared to be comforting a grieving widow. Then the relationship turned into a full public romance, and Hollywood exploded. Reynolds was humiliated, Fisher's career suffered badly, and Taylor became the woman many fans blamed for breaking apart a marriage. What made it worse was how close the families had once seemed. When comfort turns into betrayal, can glamour hide the damage left behind? Taylor survived the scandal better than Fisher did. Her beauty fame and screen power helped protect her in a way he never recovered from. But the pattern did not end there. During Cleopatra, her affair with Richard Burton created another worldwide scandal and ended her marriage to Fisher. Elizabeth Taylor remains a legend, but her romantic life left wreckage behind it. She was admired, adored, and forgiven by millions, yet the people caught in her orbit often paid the heavier price. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's clean crooner image was shaken long before he became an untouchable American icon. In 1938, he was arrested on a seduction charge, a serious accusation in that era's strict moral climate. The case was later dropped, but it left an early mark on a man whose romantic life would follow him like a second shadow. That same year, Sinatra faced another arrest, this time connected to adultery allegations, after the woman involved was found to be married. Again, the case did not destroy him legally, but it helped build the public idea of Sinatra as charming, dangerous, and impossible to separate from scandal. When a singer's voice makes millions fall in love, how much does the public forgive? The trouble did not stop with romance. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI kept a massive file on Sinatra for decades, tracking his associations, rumors, and public influence. Much of it produced little solid evidence, but the fact that he was watched so closely showed how powerful and suspicious his image had become. Frank Sinatra's legacy is not only music glamour and Las Vegas cool. It is also arrests, rumors, surveillance, and the darker price of becoming a man America could not stop watching. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo's darkness was not loud or chaotic. It could be quiet, cold, and humiliating. One of the clearest examples came in her treatment of actress Marion Davies, a woman who simply tried to return a polite visit on set. Garbo had once come to watch Davies work, so when Davies later visited Garbo's set, she expected basic courtesy. Instead, Garbo reportedly stopped filming and demanded to know why Davies was there. When Davies explained, Garbo dismissed her with a cruel remark, saying she had not come to see Davies at all, but another actress she considered truly great. What kind of ego makes a person humiliate someone who only showed respect? The insult reportedly brought Davies to tears, and Garbo did not soften. she delivered another cutting line that made the moment even colder. This was not just shyness, privacy, or the mysterious personality Hollywood sold to the public. It was deliberate cruelty from a star powerful enough to make others feel small. Greta Garbo remains one of cinema's most iconic names, but that incident reveals a sharper side behind the legend, distant, proud, and capable of using silence and status like weapons. Orson Welles. In 1983, Richard Burton tried to make friendly conversation with Orson Welles, and even offered to introduce him to Elizabeth Taylor. Welles did not respond with charm or respect. According to the story, he dismissed Burton coldly and later bragged about telling him off. That small moment captured the arrogance many people associated with him. Welles was a genius, but he could also be brutally rude. After Citizen Kane, he carried the reputation of a man who believed he was smarter than almost everyone around him. He clashed with studios, dismissed collaborators, criticized actors, and often seemed more interested in proving his superiority than protecting relationships. When brilliance turns into contempt, does genius become an excuse for cruelty? His insults could be vicious. He mocked Marlon Brando's body and spoke harshly about Bette Davis, attacking both her acting and appearance. Even advertisers who paid him for voice work were not safe from his irritation and complaints. Orson Welles changed cinema, but his personality left damage behind. He was creative, fearless, and often brilliant, yet also arrogant, dismissive, and difficult enough to make admiration feel uncomfortable. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy's public image was carefully protected. A respected actor, a married man, and a Catholic star who seemed to represent old Hollywood dignity. But inside the industry, the stories around him were far less clean. Behind the polished reputation was a long history of affairs and alleged misconduct. People in Hollywood knew Tracy as a heavy drinker and a womanizer, and some accounts described behavior that went beyond ordinary infidelity. Irene Dunne, who worked with him on A Guy Named Joe, reportedly complained about his conduct, describing him as rude and difficult. Other stories claimed he pursued women aggressively, even when they were married or clearly unavailable. How many sins can Hollywood hide behind a respected face and a perfect studio image? Tracy's relationship with Katharine Hepburn became legendary, but it also helped distract from the damage in his private life. His wife remained part of his public story, while his off-screen behavior told a different one: guilt, desire, secrecy, and power protected by fame. Spencer Tracy was undeniably talented, but the man behind the performances was not as noble as the roles suggested. His legacy still carries the smell of old Hollywood hypocrisy. Errol Flynn. In 1942, Errol Flynn's movie star image was hit by one of the ugliest scandals of old Hollywood. At the height of his fame, the actor known for adventure films and charming heroes was charged with statutory rape involving teenage girls. For audiences who saw him as a romantic swashbuckler, the case exposed something far darker behind the smile. Flynn denied the accusations and was eventually acquitted, but the damage did not disappear. The trial turned his private life into public spectacle, and the phrase "in like Flynn" became tied to his reputation as a reckless womanizer. Hollywood did not abandon him completely, but the scandal changed how people viewed his charm. What had once seemed playful now looked predatory to many. When charisma protects a powerful man, how much truth gets buried under the legend? Flynn's defenders pointed to the verdict and his continued popularity, but the accusations still left a permanent stain. They revealed how easily fame, youth alcohol, and studio protection could mix into something disturbing. Errol Flynn remains one of classic Hollywood's most recognizable leading men, but his legacy is shadowed by a scandal too serious to treat as old gossip. Marlon Brando. The stories around Marlon Brando did not end with genius. They also followed him into rooms, relationships, and film sets where his power could become damaging. He was praised as one of the greatest actors of all time, But some women who knew him described a man who could be selfish, cruel, and emotionally destructive. Rita Moreno, who had a long relationship with Brando, later spoke about how painful and harmful that relationship became. She admired his brilliance, but she also called him a bad man when it came to women. That sentence alone cuts through decades of Hollywood worship. What happens when a man's talent is so enormous that people keep excusing the damage around him? Brando's legacy became even more complicated because of Last Tango in Paris. Maria Schneider later described feeling violated and humiliated by what happened during filming, and the controversy has never fully left the movie. For many viewers, it changed the way they saw both Brando and the director behind the scenes. Marlon Brando changed acting forever, but greatness does not erase harm. His legacy remains powerful, yet stained by the women who said his brilliance came with pain. W.C. Fields. The joke around W.C. Fields was that he hated children, loved alcohol, and trusted no one. For audiences, that cranky personality became part of the comedy. But behind the act, there was enough truth to make the laughter feel darker. Fields was known as a gambler, drinker, card shark, and difficult man who often leaned into the meanest parts of human nature. His humor worked because it said the ugly thoughts polite people usually kept hidden. He mocked innocence, celebrated selfishness, and turned bitterness into entertainment. That made him funny, but it also made his public image unusually harsh. When a comedian makes cruelty part of the joke, where does the performance end and the real man begin? People who dealt with Fields described him as short-tempered, prickly, and quick to take offense. He demanded respect, disliked being challenged, and often seemed proud of being unpleasant. Unlike comedians who wanted affection from the audience, Fields seemed to dare people to laugh at the worst parts of him. W.C. Fields remains influential because his comedy was fearless. But his legacy also carries a sour edge, a brilliant performer who turned misanthropy into a brand and made nastiness feel like entertainment. Humphrey Bogart. Behind the romance of Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart was not the warm, noble figure audiences later worshipped. During production, Ingrid Bergman reportedly tried to connect with him off-camera, but Bogart remained distant, guarded, and often uninterested in building any real closeness with his co-star. At the same time, his personal life was a mess. His marriage to Mayo Methot was collapsing under drinking arguments and public tension. Their relationship became so toxic that Hollywood nicknamed them the Battling Bogarts. While that chaos followed him, Bogart was also moving toward a relationship with Lauren Bacall, a much younger actress, who would become his next wife. How much darkness can hide behind one of the most romantic images in film history? Bogart's drinking and difficult moods often shaped the atmosphere around him. He could be cold, sarcastic, and hard to reach. The wounded cynicism that made him perfect for Rick Blaine was not only acting. Parts of it seemed to come from the wreckage of his own life. Humphrey Bogart remains a Hollywood legend, but the man behind the legend was complicated. Lonely, bitter, charming, destructive, and far less heroic than the myth he left behind.